So I've finished setting up my resource details. My resource details are in a view called Resource Sheet. This resource sheet just happens to be in a separate file called Resource Pool, which was based on my maintenance contract template. So I'll save my resource pool just by clicking the Save button on my Quick Access toolbar, and I'll jump back to the maintenance contract I've got going on at Bushy Park. This particular Gantt, I want to now be able to assign resources to particular tasks. So what I've got to do is I've first of all got to tell this particular file where to get its resources from. Let's have a look at the View Resource Sheet. There are no resources in the Resource Sheet view of this file, and that is because we have to tell it to go and share the resources. So we click on the Resource tab in the ribbon. We go Resource Pool and we choose Share Resources. Oops, it just wants me to save. We go to Resource Pool and we choose Share Resources. We tell it to use the resources from the Resource Pool file. Now the reason that that automatically appears is because the Resource Pool file happens to be open. So you must have the Resource Pool file open in order to be able to share the resources into this Bushy Park file. So use the resources from the resource pool and the pool takes precedence and OK. It automatically then pulls through the resources from the resource pool and puts them into the resource sheet view in this particular project. So now I can go back to viewing the Gantt. Now before I start assigning resources to tasks, it's highly recommended that you fix the task's duration. To do this for all tasks in the project, click on the Task Name column heading to select all tasks. Then go to the Task tab in the ribbon and click the Information button out to the right. What you'll then find is a tab at the top called Advanced, and what we want to do is change the task type to fixed duration. Normally it's on fixed units. We set it to fixed duration and we click OK. Now the reason we do this is this way the durations for each of those tasks, and that includes the start and finish dates, will not change automatically. The start, finish and durations will only change if you physically change them, which is a good thing when you're initially assigning resources to tasks. When you assign a resource to a task and you say, okay, they're going to spend 2 hours on a task, and then you change your mind, if you change that 2 hours to say 20 hours, then suddenly the task duration will shrink because more hands, less work. If you suddenly assign somebody to a task and then you say, oh, they can't work full time, they have to work half the time on it, then suddenly the task will take twice as long. So to avoid your task duration suddenly increasing and decreasing erratically without your control, I would recommend that you fix the task durations. Do your initial assigning of resources and then later you can unfix them by setting it back to fixed units, and you can see what adding more resources and removing resources will do to the task durations. So it's just highly recommended. So now we're in a position to start assigning people to tasks. The first thing I want to do is I want to actually select the task in row 3, and I'm going to go to the Resource tab in the ribbon and choose Assign Resources. And here is an alphabetical list of all the resources in my resource sheet view. What I'd like to do is assign the builder to this particular task. In fact, actually assign the painter. So I'll go down to the P's, and in this units column, I'm just going to put 1. When I put 1 and press enter, the painter will jump to the top of the list. At the top of the list is always the resources that have already been assigned. And 1 means 1 full-time painter working on that task. And painter also appears to the right of the bar on the Gantt chart. And also, if I just move this split over, in the resource names column is the word painter. So what we've got here is a task that's 7 days and a painter working full-time, 1 unit, on that task for 7 days. So a painter working full-time for 7 days is going to cost you $1,575. If you decided, no, I want the painter to do 1 hour, you would simply change the 1 unit to 1H. When you press enter, you will find that that's 2% of the painter's time shown in a decimal format, and that's only going to cost you $25. So you can either enter the hours like 2H, or you can enter the units, or you might say the painter's going to work for 3 days on that task. 3 days out of the 7, that will cost you $675 and will be 43% of his or her time. So say how many days or how many units or how many hours you would like them to work on a task. I'm going to put that back to 1. Now I'd like to add some more resources to tasks. So I'm going to select, keeping this window open, rows 4, 5, 6 and 7. I'd also like the painter to work full time on those particular tasks. So I go down to the painter, and on the units column I'll put 1. And so now the painter is working full time on all of those tasks, all 5 of those tasks. The painter appears in the Gantt chart and also appears in the resource name column. I'll now select on row 9, hold the control key, and I'll select rows 13 and 17. 13 and 17. So the 3 prep tasks. I'd like a labourer to work on those 3 prep tasks. So I'll go to the labourer, and I'd like the labourer to work full time, so I put a 1. And so now the labourer is working full time on those 3 tasks. And you can see labourer in behind, and if I scroll over, you can see the labourer appearing on the Gantt chart as well. Using the control key, I'm going to click on row 10, hold the control key and choose 14 and 18. There I'd like to assign 1 full-time painter, so I'll go down to the P's, choose the painter, and 1 full-time painter. And so now the painter has been assigned to those 3 tasks, again showing on the Gantt and showing in behind. You could interact directly with this particular column as well, so this is not the only way. If I click on row 11, hold the control key and click on rows 15 and 19, I would like to also assign labourers to those tasks, but I'd like to assign 2 labourers to each of those tasks, so I'll type 2. And there they are there. 2 labourers on each of those tasks. So that's the idea there, is you simply click on a task, and as I click on them, you simply assign 1 or more resources to a task, and you move between the tasks, leaving this window open. In this particular window, you can also see other options. So for example, I could click on labourer, and I could go into these options, and I could say, look, I would like to see all those who are available for so many hours. I might even like to graph the labourer. If I graph the labourer, I can see here the hours that they're actually working, actually the units that they're working. I could right click and actually ask for the work, so 27 hours, 27 hours, 27 hours, 9 hours, 9 hours, 18. So you get extra views as well that you can see. I might remove this split simply by going to View and taking off Details, and I've returned to the Gantt. So simply select your tasks, choose your resource, and decide if you want 1 full-time unit, if you want them to work 1 hour, or you'd like them to work for 1 day. And if you wish to remove them, simply click the resource and click the Remove button, and they'll go back into the alphabetical list. So that's one way of assigning resources, is using this dialog window here, and I'll close it. Another way is simply to interact with the resource names column, where you can hit the drop down and you can choose a certain resource, or you can type them in. Another way is to split the screen. If I was to go to View and I was to tick Details, I will split the screen. And we looked at this when we were looking at notes. If I click on this task, there's the note there. But besides notes, we can right click and we can say, actually, instead of notes, could we see work? And when I click on work and then click on a task, I can see who's working on a particular task and the total number of hours and the total number of units that have been assigned to that particular task. So I can see, for example, here that I've got 2 labourers doing 18 hours. Now if I right click a blank area and switch it from work to cost, I can see that that's costing me $324. And again, as I click on tasks, I can see the cost. If I right click and go back to work, the other thing you can do is you can assign overtime. So if the labourer is spending a total of 90 hours, that is 10 days full time, and they do a 9-hour day, I might decide of that 10 hours is overtime. And that would mean that the cost of that resource working on that task has just gone up, because 10 of those 90 hours will be charged out at their overtime rate, and 80 of the 90 hours would be charged at their standard rate. That's assuming that they had an overtime rate, which the labourer does not. And I can easily delete the overtime or delete the resource as well. And undo, and they're back again. And switch it back to work, and it's back to how it was. So that's the idea. You can also get rid of the split either by double clicking or by taking off the tick on details, and that will get rid of the split. So I find the easiest way to assign resources to tasks is to go to the Resource tab, choose the Assign Resources dialog box, click on a task, and start assigning what resources you want to work on that task and how many hours or units you want them to assign.